This is The Bandwagon, a podcast about baseball, both the high-functioning and highly dysfunctional teams. I'm Hannah Keyser, a baseball writer at Yahoo Sports, joined as always by Zach Crizer, also a baseball writer at Yahoo Sports. Zach, we have no time for pleasantries.
We do not have time for pleasantries. You just got back from like a weekend a little upstate for your husband's birthday.
Yes.
And while you were gone, all hell broke loose in baseball.
So much happened. As I was just saying to you before we're potting, here we are doing the pleasantries that we said we wouldn't do. I intended to fully disconnect from baseball, and then I didn't fully disconnect from baseball because when you cover baseball professionally, it is still really fun to leisurely lie on the couch and watch some weekend day baseball with all the windows open and a nice upstate New York breeze blowing in. So we did a little bit of that. We unfortunately didn't pay attention to the dysfunction. We were just like, let's only watch pleasant games. And we missed a whole lot of stuff. Working sort of in reverse chronological order, the most recent and perhaps like most long-term significant thing was the Orioles soft suspending, not airing broadcaster Kevin Brown for a little while, and the sort of explanation that came out in the fallout from that. We're going to talk about that later in the show. So let's talk about the fight. Tell me about the fight as you experienced it, because I, again, was not made aware of it either in real time or even shortly thereafter. So I've since watched it. We're not going to describe it. Jose Ramirez of the Cleveland Guardians and Tim Anderson of the Chicago White Sox fully fought. And if you don't know what we are talking about, you should find a clip because that will be the most experiential way of experiencing it.
It was the best baseball punch since Rougned Odor against Jose Bautista. That's the major thing you need to know is Jose Ramirez landed a wild right hook that sent Tim Anderson to the ground. This all seemed to start because Jose Ramirez took exception to Tim Anderson doing exceptionally hard tags, it would seem. That's what Jose Ramirez said afterward.
Yes.
I don't pretend to understand that one. It didn't visually look crazy to me.
That did not look like a particularly hard tag. It did feel like, this felt like actually like an interesting glimpse in some ways of inside the parts of unwritten rules culture that are maybe valuable and not just like don't celebrate type unwritten rules culture. Like it felt like, so Jose Ramirez did talk about this after the fact. As far as I know, there has not yet been any comments from Tim Anderson. We're recording Tuesday morning, but Jose Ramirez spoke and he said about Tim Anderson, I think he's been disrespecting the game for a while. It's not from yesterday or before. And I even have the chance to tell him during the game, don't do that style, just be respectful. Don't start tagging people like that, because in reality, we're here trying to find ways to provide for our families. When he does a thing that he does on the bases, he can get somebody out of the game. So for me, I was telling him to stop doing that. So it feels like Jose Ramirez is sort of talking about like
something in the past.
Behave in a way that doesn't unnecessarily put people at injury risk, is I think sort of what he was getting at. But you say it started with that. Jesse Rogers, ESPN, wrote about this fight, I think a couple times, or at least once, and says in a game July 27th, so we're going a few weeks back, Guardian first baseman Josh Naylor imitated former White Sox third baseman Jake Berger's base hit celebration, and Anderson took exception to that. And then in the same game, Emmanuel Clase struck out Andrew Benintendi and then yelled in the direction of the Chicago dugout. And Anderson in particular could be seen looking out at the mound from the White Sox dugout as the Guardians celebrated their win. Looking out from the dugout as the White Sox celebrated, being cited as like a plot point in this drama is a weird, and I don't say that to sort of discredit Jesse Rogers' reporting. I just mean like it kind of just feels like everybody doesn't like each other and there's almost scraping the bottom of the barrel for tangible reasons that are not just like, I don't like him.
Right. I think the thing that, this could have easily been like a little pushing and shoving and it would have been a normal benches clearing, like whatever, not that big a deal. And frankly, because it was an AL Central game, no one would have talked about it. But the thing that escalated this, regardless of what led up to it, and Jose Ramirez kind of described this in his comments also, is that he gets up after he slides, they start jawing, and then I don't know if Anderson said, I would like to fight, but he said something to the effect of, yes, we're going to fight.
Right.
and dropped his gloves like hockey style, which is the funniest. It might be
And
better than the punch. He drops his gloves hockey style, puts his fists up like a boxer, and the second base umpire was definitely not trying to do this, but he looked exactly like a boxing umpire, just like stepping away, like, oh, here we go. So then Jose Ramirez was like, I guess I'm fighting too. But Jose Ramirez is significantly smaller than everyone else in the frame, but somehow still lands the punch on Anderson while the pitcher, Michael Kopech, has him in a headlock. All around a pretty interesting fight. And, there were some video of Tim Anderson after he got punched that made you think he should probably be tested for a concussion.
Yeah.
And I hope he is getting the proper care for that. And because it's the White Sox, I am not very confident he is.
Okay, that would have been an excellent transition moment that we are not going to take because I have more to say about this fight. But yeah, when guys are wobbly, a little woozy looking on the field, we should check them for concussions, not only in the immediate aftermath, but perhaps in the days to come. Okay, back to the fight. Short guys, I don't know how tall Jose Ramirez is, but short guys should watch this fight as a good lesson in how to leverage your compact. He's 5'9", according to Wikipedia. 5'9" guys, watch this fight. Learn how to leverage your compact stature. Because I felt like Jose Ramirez really used his lack of height to his advantage. He dodged a couple of punches from Tim Anderson, kept his head down. In my notes that I was like, I was throwing everything I could find about this into my notes app doc, my Notion app doc. And I was like writing down, I said, okay, the manager's fight, ? And then I wrote, Andrew Vaughn, a hero? ? Did you see Andrew Vaughn's distinct role in all of this?
He picked up Tim Anderson like around the waist. Like I saw someone compare it to Scooby-Doo carrying Scrappy-Doo away when he's getting into something he shouldn't.
Not a reference that means anything to me, but sure. Yeah, he was. So Andrew Vaughn initially is one of the many people. So, right, they start throwing punches and bench is obviously clear and people are, fights are fascinating to watch. These baseball brawls are genuinely fascinating. This is why, like, whenever there's a baseball brawl, we, as a media, as a commentary, as a fan, are always sort of caught between being like, oh, I don't condone that violence, and being like, this is really compelling footage. And I will just say, in defense of all of us who find the footage to be quite compelling, that the reason it is so compelling is less about the violence and more about the sort of specific roles everybody plays in the interpersonal dynamics that emerge and the like weird friendships that you see and who helps who and who's a peacemaker and who's a not peacemaker. What do they call them in hockey?
An enforcer.
An enforcer, yeah. So Andrew Vaughn seems to be a peacemaker because he's one of the many people sort of getting in between the two of them. And he does like a hold Tim Anderson back thing early on in the fight, holds Tim Anderson back. And then I'm not going to take you through the blow by blow because I don't remember it. But at some point, Tim Anderson is back in the dugout and there's still like hordes of people jawing at each other on the field. And then Tim Anderson runs out of the dugout. And Andrew Vaughn, that's when he scoops him up. Just scoops him. What are their heights? Because Tim Anderson.
I don't know if Andrew Vaughn is a lot taller than Tim Anderson, but he's definitely a lot bigger than Tim Anderson.
Tim Anderson is listed at 6'1", 185. And Andrew Vaughn is listed at 6 foot 215, so smaller but bigger, and successfully carries him back down into the dugout. So I don't know. He seems like a good friend to have on a wild night out, either for your own protection or, you get a little tired, he can carry you home.
The other funny thing about side characters in this that someone pointed out is Elvis Andrus, White Sox second baseman in this instance, is standing right behind this whole thing when it starts and is not involved at all. Like, he did not do anything to incite it. He doesn't really have a big role in the fight, which is exactly where Elvis Andrus was for the Jose Bautista Rougned Odor fight. He was the Rangers shortstop in that. Both of the best punches in like the last 20 years of baseball, Elvis Andrus has had the closest front row seat.
If someone has not already, they should ask him to compare and contrast from his vantage point. There are a lot of suspensions. Tim Anderson has been suspended for 6 games. Jose Ramirez for 3. They are both appealing. Emmanuel Clase for 1, and both managers, Pedro Grifol and Terry Francona, as well as Guardians third base coach, also for 1. So the main figures are both appealing their suspensions, and so they are still currently playing. I don't want to get into this too much. It's weird that Tim Anderson hasn't. He's tweeted about it. He's tweeted many cryptic tweets, but he has not.
Did he leave all the cryptic tweets, or did he delete some of them?
Oh gosh,
it doesn't matter, but
I don't know. I am sure that being on the White Sox this year is a massive bummer, and that he has some very legitimate frustrations with the team. He should deal with them in a way that is not on Twitter. Okay, he has not deleted them, as far as I can tell.
Okay, they're there.
They all just say things like, all this happening for a reason, ... and then been going through this for a min, ... A lot of ellipses. And then only one hashtag, which is hashtag fake, which he appended to the tweet that said, a lot of MF been switching it up too. Actually, of all the things that Tim Anderson did in this incident, for whatever reason, like, that bothers me in some ways, like, the most. It's like, what are you mad about? Just tell us what you're mad. Like, I don't like cryptic allusions to the fact that you've been wronged after you physically had an altercation. Like, something is obviously wrong. You're not doing anyone a service by being coy about it. If there are concerns, bring them to the forefront. Tell us about them. Like Keynan Middleton, formerly of the White Sox, now on the Yankees, did. He brought his concerns right out there in the open. I thought this was going to be the least impactful trade of all time when it was the only thing the Yankees did at the deadline. And I thought,
turns out,
just this guy? Just some reliever from the White Sox? And the reliever from the White Sox has a lot to say. Also, Jesse Rogers reporting, wow, big week for Jesse. Keynan Middleton told him, we came in with no rules. I don't know how you police the culture. This is talking about the White Sox. If there are no rules or guidelines to follow because everyone is doing their own thing, like, how do you say anything about it? Because there are no rules. You have rookies sleeping in the bullpen during games. That's a crucial detail that comes back later. You have guys missing meetings. You have guys missing PFPs. That's the pitcher fielding practice. And there are no consequences for any of this stuff. So he's basically alleging that the White Sox have bad culture and perhaps even bad baseball because there is no structure, there's no rules. Asks where the void exists. With the White Sox, Middleton said, leadership in general, they say rolls downhill. I feel like some guys don't want to speak up when they should have. It's hard to police people when there are no rules. I think that's only kind of true, first of all. Like, most people are able to behave professionally at a workplace and not sleep without their having to experience consequences first. Rick Hahn, White Sox GM, denied this. He said, I was surprised to see the report this morning. At no point during the course of the year has there been a reliever sleeping in the bullpen. That's just wrong. And then he went on to say, quite frankly, it's a little bit ironic that Keynan is the one saying this because my last conversation with him face-to-face was a week ago in the clubhouse where he sought me out to apologize for his unprofessional behavior that Pedro, again, Grifol, the manager, had called him out on. That's what he said. The other thing that he said was, the White Sox have a position player with a serious sleep disorder who is permitted to take naps in the clubhouse per medical direction. I don't know. Maybe we'll come back to that. That just seems like a strange fact to learn.
That was what Rick Hahn said.
That's what Rick Hahn said. Rick Hahn was like,
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he got confused with a guy who has like a medical exemption and is allowed to sleep, and described it as a serious medical disorder about sleep. I don't know where you want to take this.
Yeah. Okay. So I will say that Keynan Middleton also had an interesting, like, seemingly red herring of a comment where he both said the reliever sleeping in the bullpen thing. Actually, I don't even know if he said it was a reliever sleeping in the bullpen. He said someone was sleeping in the bullpen. Maybe the position player came to the bullpen to sleep. Who knows? Then later, Keynan Middleton in Jesse's story said that the pitching staff was professional. It was the hitters who were not. But he didn't really provide any examples except for the bullpen thing, that Jesse was able to print. I'm sure Keynan Middleton probably said some other things that just weren't on the record. Reporting is hard. I don't know what compelled Keynan Middleton to speak out about this. It's, I appreciate the insight, even if some of it seems a little bit hard to pin down. But he was talking about joining the Yankees, and there's a real culture here. And he didn't want to shave his beard, but he was happy to, just to get away from the White Sox pretty much.
First of all, I thought that was such a weird, I actually do want to spend a second on that. Sorry for cutting you off. Yeah, he said, you hear about it before you come over here. I guess sort of talking about the Yankees having more of a bear down culture. I don't know. I don't even know whatever, because we're going to get into that. But okay, he thinks the Yankees, they have a better culture. They're stricter, and that is indicative of their better culture. He said, did I want to shave my beard off? Hell no, I had to. I wanted to be part of the Yankees. There was no question. So you interpreted that as he was willing to do anything, even shave his beard off, which hell no, he did not want to be part of the Yankees. I also read that as a weird kind of people need rules and strict boundaries and to be told, and people join the military willingly, and some people flourish there. So that's that's a fine way to feel. But I almost found that to be well, that just seems like it's more telling about you then. I find the Yankees' facial hair policy to be quite strange and not indicative of what a place that people can flourish because they are forced to adhere to such strict guidelines. And I'm not a person who loves to adhere to strict guidelines. So that might be why I feel that way, as evidenced by how freely I curse on this podcast. But I just thought that was an interesting thing for him to include, because it really does feel like it's maybe some people on the White Sox, I don't really know what to say about this actually, because I want to be maybe some people on the White Sox don't mind that they're not being forced to adhere to a certain aesthetic as a way of emphasizing how singular and militaristic and in line they all are. And that would be fine. That said, it does seem like he has a point. The White Sox have a bad culture, as evidenced by all their losing. So I don't really know who's in the right.
Yeah, I think something, if you try to, a lot of stories we end up doing are trying to talk to baseball players on good teams about, what's working here? Why is this going well? And I tried to do a story about this on the Astros that you will not be reading because I did not get enough to do it. If you talk to the Astros about why they've been a great team for 7 years running, it's not management has enforced such strict boxes that we know what we're doing every single hour of the day. And we know it's just, well, everyone here has a general idea of what it takes to be good, what it takes to sustain excellence. And it's kind of self-enforced. It's, you see Michael Brantley doing things and you follow his lead. You see this young guy learn from this older guy, and now he does it the same way. It's not this top-down thing, which Keynan Middleton says it should be.
Right.
I don't think it is. In most of the winning clubhouses, it's not some edict from the top that is enforced every single day. It's much more everyone's kind of on the same page and does what works for them, and it's kind of a self-policed, it's not even policed, a self-motivated way of being.
Self-policed from a I've talked to teams where they've said the problem is the lack of player leadership, and that it is tougher to enforce things from a top-down mentality. That guys don't necessarily want to. They're adults. So that's what I'm saying. It's a little bit tricky to parse. Do I think that Keynan Middleton is speaking reflective of what was in fact a bad culture? Probably, because there's a lot of other reasons they're getting into fights on the field to think that some things are wrong in the White Sox culture. I think his impression of where he would thrive, and we can get into next whether or not that's the Yankees, his impression of where he would thrive as being somewhere that does have very strict guidelines and a strict sense of consequence and a top-down boundaries, all like that's fine for him. That doesn't necessarily mean that like by not having that is what the White Sox are doing wrong. And you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there are rules. You got to show up at a certain time, whatever.
Right.
You got to
he's telling us about the vibe of the White Sox, but his diagnosis of the consequences might not exactly be on point.
Yeah.
Broadly.
Yes. It's look, it is genuinely tricky. Baseball, well, I only know baseball this well, but like maybe even more so than other sports. It's tough. It's a lot of guys who work together in really often very stressful. I know they have cool jobs, but like often very stressful circumstances and certainly exhausting, sort of like relentless, rigorous. It's August and everyone is slogging through. We're after the trade deadline. And so the teams that sold know they're not going anywhere and still they have to show up every day and like play in 100 degrees or whatever, depending on where you are. So certainly there is a alchemy to every clubhouse, and it depends on the personnel, what kind of culture is going to be the best. The Rays will tell you that the reason they're so good is because everyone's doing their own thing and having fun, and certainly not because they have such strict guidelines and they're being told how to wear their facial hair. So, you know what I mean? It's like you got to have the right mix of structure to not structure spectrum and the right personnel to fit in with that. And for Keynan Middleton, honestly, like maybe he is a better fit for the Yankees, and that's great for him. And again, I appreciate him providing this insight into the White Sox clubhouse. I am concerned about this position player who has a serious sleep disorder. Are they okay? Probably not. The Yankees are a team that Keynan Middleton seems to think everything's running smoothly. It's like Germany, where the trains always run on time, as according to Keynan Middleton over here.
Which is quite a statement considering the week that Keynan Middleton has been on the Yankees for.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yes. Some of this predates him. Some of it does not. And I don't know how you could pay attention to the Yankees this week in particular and come away being like, that's a team that's running a tip-top ship. Everything's running on time.
I'd say the most disruptive thing was about this time last week, right after the trade deadline. Domingo Germán reportedly...
Not reportedly.
Came.
I guess. Sorry. Yes. Reportedly, what happened?
Yeah, he came into the clubhouse, kind of in a rage, and destroyed some couches and TVs, and the Yankees figured out that he was under the influence of alcohol. They put him in the team sauna and like put security around him to try to calm him down. All of this led to the next day an announcement that he would be put on the restricted list to seek treatment for alcohol abuse, and GM Brian Cashman said he won't be playing for the team again this year, and I think we can pretty well ascertain that he's probably done with the Yankees. This is the same pitcher who has been suspended for domestic violence in the past after an issue at a team gala after a team gala where he struck his wife, and then he also pitched a perfect game this year, which is really not going to be remembered as well, I don't think.
Yeah. And missed a start earlier in the week with like a mysterious armpit ailment, but then came into a game. Again, the kind of thing that seemed like a big deal at the time and then quickly got overshadowed. We are not experts in discussing alcohol abuse and alcoholism as a disease, and so we're not going to linger too much on that. To Brian Cashman's credit, when he spoke to the media, this was Wednesday pre-game. So after this incident, which had happened after the trade deadline, but
on Tuesday night,
before Wednesday's game, he was, very much like, we just want to make sure that he gets the help. The most important thing is that it's a very serious issue that affects way too many people, unfortunately, Cashman said. Hopefully the steps are being taken today will really benefit him for the remaining part of his life, because it's a very serious problem and you need to address it head on. These treatment places are significant steps, hopefully, towards getting him the tools to solve it. That's great. Like, genuine. I don't say that like tritely. Like, yes, that's true. Insofar as being a member of the New York Yankees is part of why he has access to this treatment or part of why he was sort of encouraged to seek this treatment is good. I thought that the way Brian Cashman spoke about this to the media on Wednesday in an effort to cover the Yankees' tracks was strange. So, again, this is a bigger than baseball issue. And I think all of the media who was there were trying to balance the fact that, like, this was a very strange press conference to get less than 24 hours after the trade deadline, for one thing. However many days or weeks after he threw a perfect game, a couple of days after he was scratched from a start. Like, there was a lot of going on, and the line of questioning as it pertains to baseball does not undermine the fact that, like, I give everyone their credit for believing. I'm not going to be like, I can't believe people were asking about the baseball implications when a guy was going into treatment for alcoholism. We all did the, like, it's good that he's getting treatment for alcoholism. People ask, of course, when did you know about this sort of in relation to the trade deadline? Because the Yankees now are very short on pitching, as evidenced by the fact that Luis Severino started a game later that week, and they weren't too coy about the fact that he probably wouldn't have, except for that they have no pitching left because of all these moving pieces. And Brian Cashman took great pains to say ground zero, which, weird analogy, one, just because that's a weird analogy to reference, and two, because ground zero is a place and not a time. But he kept being like, ground zero happened after the trade deadline. Trade deadline is 6 p.m. And the reporting that has since come out, Wall Street Journal, SNY, the reporting that's since come out supports that. Yes, something happened after the trade deadline. He showed up. He seemed visibly intoxicated. However, the stringent emphasis on that by Brian Cashman feels like it inaccurately describes how a person and the people around them would experience alcoholism. And he's only doing that to justify their behavior at the deadline. I'm not alleging that they specifically knew or they'd seen something beforehand or even necessarily that they should have known. But, like, Domingo Germán did not enter a treatment program that will keep him out at least for the rest of the year, if not indefinitely, from Major League Baseball because of one incident. Like, that's just not, you know what I mean? Like, that's clearly he had, like, they are taking his issues with alcohol seriously, but then they are undermining that by being like, it wasn't even a thing until yesterday, which is like
alcoholism
just a weird...
does not just show up on a Tuesday night. It has...
Yeah. And I wish they had not done that. I don't know. Maybe they didn't. I mean, I'm sure they didn't realize it was going to come to a head quite so dramatically, and that was going to have, like, obvious baseball ramifications to their rotation that they maybe should have addressed at the deadline. Off mic, I would perhaps take this further and say, like, maybe they actually should have known. But I wouldn't allege that into a microphone. I'm not saying that they should have known. I'm just saying that, like, the version of how this played out presented by Brian Cashman is quite obviously just, like, not true to someone's experience, even if it is true to his experience. And I think he is doing a disservice to the otherwise sort of solemnity with which they are discussing the issue to emphasize that point so as to justify having not acquired a starting pitcher at the deadline. Okay, all of that is to say there are other reasons that the Yankees are having a bad week.
So the other thing that happened, Anthony Rizzo went on the IL for concussion symptoms, post-concussion syndrome symptoms that stem from a collision he had with Fernando Tatis Jr. in May.
He went through concussion protocol at the time. He came out of that game and was out for, I believe, a couple of games.
Yeah,
and at the time they said it was
visibly woozy. Yeah,
and at the time they said it was a neck issue. And I'm not saying they were, like, lying there. It's that's when you get hit in the head, your neck also feels it, I'm sure. And then he returned to playing, and he was terrible. Like, that is relevant. Like, Anthony Rizzo has been absolutely atrocious at baseball since that day. And before that, he was pretty good. It was very early. It was a small sample size. He's good historically, but he was also good for the first 2 months of the season or whatever. And then he was terrible.
And it was terrible in a specific way, which was he did not seem to have the same ability to judge pitches coming to the plate, which,
when they were in Baltimore, whenever that was, like a week and a half ago, he apparently started reporting symptoms of grogginess. He's talked about this. You should read some of what he self-describes as symptoms. He felt hungover, even though he hadn't been drinking. He was experiencing grogginess. He reported this to the team in Baltimore. So weeks, months after the collision, but also days, crucially, before they told us about it. And then he underwent more, I don't know, specific neurological testing when they got back to New York, and they determined that he had post-concussion syndrome and that he's going to go on the aisle, obviously, and try to deal with this. My initial reaction was like the same as everybody else's, which is like, what the hell? This happened months ago. How did they not know? He's looked so bad. And there is certainly room to allow for the possibility that, like, players are competitive and neurological symptoms are nonspecific, and it can be tough to diagnose someone who isn't reporting any specific issues. And maybe the flaws are with the concussion protocol, which is not set by the Yankees, but by Major League Baseball. However, people have been asking Aaron Boone, who is not a doctor, but it's the person who does regular media availabilities, like, is something wrong with Rizzo physically? And they have been assuring the media that nothing is wrong with him physically. And again, I'm not saying that they are lying, but I do think that it's a really long time for them to have gone without also starting to think perhaps something is wrong with him physically to such a degree that it would force them to take whatever action they've since taken with the neurological testing that revealed, yes, something is wrong with him. Like, I don't really understand how they went all these months with him seeming like something was wrong to outside observers, even if he himself was not reporting any symptoms, whether that's because he wasn't noticing them, wasn't experiencing them, wasn't taking them credulously, was downplaying them out of selflessness, competitiveness, whatever else. Just looking at him, you would think they would be like, and maybe, and not even like specific to that collision with Fernando Tatis Jr., but like, did they do nothing in the months since just to try to rule things out because of his struggles?
Seemingly with the Yankees, a lot of trying to stretch just to get through the day, through the week, through the month, through the season. The on the field example from this weekend that we can maybe reference as a microcosm of much bigger issues. Giancarlo Stanton was on second base against the Astros. Someone hit a ball to right center field that he looked like he should score on. It was not hit so hard that it would be a tough play for most guys to get from second to home. He was running at what I would call like jogging around the neighborhood speed, maybe. Like in a windbreaker, maybe in running shoes, nothing crazy. So he comes all the way around third like that at no point seems to hit anywhere close to top speed for a professional athlete. And when he gets to home plate, he's so out that he doesn't even slide, doesn't even dodge, just
stops. Just
gives
stops,
in.
Like before even the
here you go.
batter's box. Like,
I am here, tag me.
Yeah.
And that, understandably rankled a lot of Yankees fans and raised eyebrows of like, is he playing when he shouldn't be? Is there some health issue that he's playing through that keeps him from running? Like, the basic idea of running seemed like it wasn't actually really possible. And after the game, obviously everyone asked Aaron Boone about this. And Boone told, this is Gary Phillips from the New York Daily News tweeted this, it's just him trying to preserve himself, Boone said, of Giancarlo Stanton's slow trot home. The manager said he believes the slugger has a fear of putting himself in a bad spot after so many injuries. So it's just a lot of that. It is a lot of, the Yankees have a lot of guys right now who seem to be compromised in one way or the other that are trying to either gut it out or, Aaron Judge is playing with a torn toe ligament. It's just a really nightmare scenario for the Yankees in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Some of which are kind of unavoidable, like Judge. But are maybe not being treated with the utmost care by the Yankees as they try to gut out a winning season.
I think that is really insightful by you. And now that you've pointed out, it's like, right, it's so obvious that there's a lot of stuff that individually, each explanation, you're like, well, all right, if you say so, like Anthony Rizzo, he's physically fine. Like, what? Well, I'm not implying that they were covering anything up with Herman, but the armpit thing was weird. And Aaron Judge, why didn't he go on like rehab starts? And why is he, sitting and not always like all this sort of like, there's a lot of like granular level decisions being made that the very good cohort of beat reporters is always like, why this? Why that? Why isn't Stanton running? Why is like Rizzo still in the lineup day after day? Why was Rizzo in the lineup after he reported the symptoms, but before they did the neurological testing? Like, and in each case, the explanation is like, well, people are always a little bit banged up and, and we're just trying to this and we're just trying to that. And like, but then, right, holistically, it amounts to kind of like, well, where are you going with all of this slightly compromised aging team? And at some point, should you take a step back and set your sights on a specific target and not do anything between now and then just for the sake of it? You know what I mean? Like, I'm thinking about it, like even just the Judge stuff. I know that the Judge stuff feels like the least avoidable, the most unavoidable. He has a torn toe ligament, but he's a very good baseball player and he still hits home runs and so fine. But like, even that feels to me a little bit like he's playing hurt. He's not being secretive about that. Like he's playing hurt. And for what reason is what I would say. Like, are they going for it? I mean that in like are the Yankees trying to win this year? Because if so, why didn't they do more at the deadline? Are the Yankees not trying to win this year? If so, why is Aaron Judge playing hurt? And why did they do less at the deadline? Or not? Why did they not do more in that direction? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, right, you can't take half measures, which is like literally what they're doing with Judge, for instance, which is like he DHs and then he sits a day and then he plays the field a day. Like, why are you doing all these half measures if you are only postponing an inevitable breaking point or someone needing to take a longer stretch off? Or like, yeah, there's a lot of kind of like with the Herman stuff, like, was there no evidence that perhaps he needed someone to take a closer look at what was going on with him between, like, or did they just, like, how, you know what I mean? Like, how much are they like, we can just get through this if we all play a little bit banged up, but is in service of what? In service of what? I guess, look, they're not like way out of the race. They could make the postseason. So maybe they will say, it was all worth it when they do that, but they are making a lot of choices that require them to explain them away by saying like, well, it's not as bad as it seems, or there are underlying issues that you don't know about, or some mix of something that feels like some information is going to come to light eventually. And it's going to be like, yeah, well, why didn't you do second round of neurological testing back in May type stuff. All right.
It's keeping a lot of people in the pressure cooker and seeing how long they can go.
Yeah. And that's, I hope that's everything Keynan Middleton hoped and dreamed it would be. We're going to take a quick break and come back with some Atlanta Braves talk. I don't like when people frame things as like, we don't talk enough about blah, blah, blah. But this is our podcast, and so we are responsible for the fact that we have not talked enough about the Atlanta Braves because they are so good, and it is not unexpected like the Diamondbacks were, and they're not unexpectedly bad like the Mets or Padres were. Like, they're just really, really good, and they're definitely going to win the NL East, and they might even win the World Series. Here are some Fangraphs odds. Braves currently 70-40, one of only two teams, the other one being the Orioles with 70 wins so far. The Braves have a better record because they've just played fewer games. 100% chance to make the postseason according to Fangraphs. 99.6% chance to win the division and get a bye. 24.9% chance to win the World Series. They are one of 30 teams. They have a 1 in 4 chance of winning the World Series this year. So this week, aside from bantering about all the dysfunction, we are just going to talk about how good the Braves are.
The highly functional Braves the highly functional Ronald Acuna Jr. specifically, who is, as much as Shohei Ohtani is cruising to the AL MVP award, he is cruising to the NL MVP award. And I wanted to start with a brief quiz. So the thing that Ronald Acuna Jr. specifically has done this year, beyond being the best hitter in the National League, is he's doing the really fun thing of having a lot of homers and a lot of steals at the same time. The 40-40 club, everyone knows that. It's really fun when guys do it. It's been a while since anyone did it. And I wanted to talk about some clubs that Ronald Acuna Jr. is either already in or on pace to be in. And specifically, I'm going to ask you a club, and you're going to tell me if you think anyone is in the club ever.
Okay.
Specifically since integration. We're going since 1947, which, as you will see with a lot of these things, there was no one doing home run clubs before then anyway, really, except Babe Ruth. So this is since 1947. Has anyone ever been in the 50-420 club? That is 50 steals and a 420 on-base percentage, which Acuna already has the 50 steals, and he has an on-base percentage over 420.
Yes?
Yes. A couple guys have done this. Ricky Henderson, Joe Morgan, Tony Gwynn, and Tim Raines. That is all Hall of Famers. Okay. How about the 75-550 club? 75 steals and a 550 slugging percentage, which Acuna is on pace to do. He's on pace for 79 steals, and his slugging percentage is 580 something.
Well, I know he's not on pace for 40 home runs.
He's not on pace for 40 home runs, but his slugging percentage is over this.
Right. I'm just saying, yeah. I'm trying to, sorry, how many were the steals in this club? What were the steals?
75.
Oh, that is a lot of steals. Okay. I was going to say, every member of the 40-40 club would probably have been in that if it was only 40 steals, but it's not. It's 75 steals, which is a lot more, almost double. It's a lot of steals. So, no.
No one's ever done this. And he could do this. Okay. Another thing about Acuna is he bats leadoff for the Braves, and the Braves are very good, so he scores a lot of runs. Has anyone ever been, and, leadoff hitters did not hit a lot of home runs in the past. Has anyone ever done 35 homers, 145 runs, the 31-45 club?
I don't know. I've never thought about how many runs. I don't even know what a lot of runs versus a little bit of runs to have scored is in a season. Like,
Acuna's at 99 right now, and he's leading the majors.
Did you know that before you looked it up?
That he was leading the majors?
What? That roughly 100 runs would be a lot of runs to have scored.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. I didn't. I've never thought about the individual count of runs scored by one dude. Give me the club again, as if that's gonna
35-145.
I don't know. No.
This has been done. Sammy Sosa, only 3 times. Sammy Sosa, Jeff Bagwell, and Ted Williams. That's it.
Okay.
The 50-150 club, 50 steals, 150 OPS plus.
That I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah, this has been done a lot. This is Joe Morgan, the usual suspects from before: Joe Morgan, Ricky Henderson, Cesar Cedeno, who was a very underrated talent in the 70s, Barry Bonds, Eric Davis, Tony Gwynn, and Tim Raines. The 35-75 club, 35 homers and 75 steals, which is pretty much the peak of what Acuna is on pace for. He's on pace to not hit 40 home runs. He'd only be on pace to hit 39 homers, and then he'd steal about 79 bases. No, this doesn't exist. He would be the first member of this club if he were to do it. How about 30 homers and 75 steals?
No.
It has not been done either. And he could join
I learned
very quickly. This is, the 25-75 club, 25 homers, 75 steals.
Yes.
There's only one member, Ricky Henderson.
Oh.
And then last one, 35-50, 35 homers and 50 steals.
Yes.
Yes, just barely. This is the season I think he's most... I mean, he's going to have way more steals than this, but the best comp for him might be Eric Davis, who whose career was really derailed by injuries, but he came up with the Cincinnati Reds in the late 80s and was an absolute star. I mean, in 1987, he hit 37 homers, 100 RBIs, 50 steals exactly, with a 155 OPS plus. So very similar to what Acuna is doing, just slightly different era and everything. He was also an outfielder. I would say that's the closest we've seen, and we're very likely going to see Acuna join a club that just doesn't exist. Just no one's ever done it before, casually.
All right.
And yeah, that's Ronald Acuna Jr. this year.
Is it boring that the MVP races are already wrapped up, or do you like knowing that we are witnessing historic seasons?
I like the lack of an argument. I find MVP arguments and debates kind of tiring. I kind of like that we've pivoted from MVP races to history chases. I think that's more fun in my mind, especially when there's something, especially in Acuna's case, that's so easily followed. I mean, you just have to count. That's it. That's the only... It's not the Shohei Ohtani thing where he's hard to calculate because it's all of these things combined into one. And even when you're looking at can he have the best season all time by wins above replacement, there's a couple different formulas. And so you're kind of comparing him against his Baseball Reference War and his Fangraphs. It's a little tougher. Ohtani's just one of one. There's not even a lot to say about what he's doing anymore other than, yep, no one's ever done that. Whereas Acuna, he's very much in league with a bunch of guys who have run a lot and hit for power or hit really well. It's just a matter of can he one-up them in very easy-to-see ways. And I think he's going to in this one specific way.
See, I think they're more similar than you're giving them credit for, the sort of Ohtani and Acuna. The reason that they are likely to win MVP is because they have a combined skill set that is so rarely combined. With Acuna, it's just both from the batting side of the ball. It's the speed and power. I know we're interested in looking into how much less he's striking out this year. Yeah. You have those numbers handy?
He has cut his strikeout rate. He was very good power hitters in this day and age tend to strike out between 20 and 28, 30% of the time. And that's pretty much what Acuna was doing. Prior to this season, his career strikeout rate was 25.3%, which when you combine it with a good walk rate, which he had 11.4%, that's a really good, that's about as good as you're going to get for a guy with real power. Nope, he is down to a 12.3% strikeout rate this year, which is much closer to like Luis Arraez level of strikeout rate than to most of the power hitters. And I mean, that's incredible.
This is not in any way like the right way to couch this number or calculate this number or sort of emphasize this number. But like, if you go to Fangraphs and you click on leaders and then you click on batting and then you click on 2023, it's not clicking all the way. You're just scrolling. Ron Acuna Jr. atop the list for position player war, according to Fangraphs, at 6.1. But I was just sort of like looking, I was looking at that, and then I was looking at his strikeout rate because I knew that was something that you wanted to talk about. And like you said, strikeout rate, 12.3. And then I was just looking down from there. So if you start with him at the very top, the position player war leaderboard, because a lot of that is coming from the home runs, from the stolen bases, all these things. From the average, he's hitting 339. And then you just look down the K% rate, sort of like the best position players by WAR, what their K% rates are. Ronald Acuna Jr., 12.3. Freddie Freeman, second, 17.1. Shohei Ohtani, 23.8. Mookie Betts, 16.1. Marcus Semien, 12.9. That's the first one we've gotten to. That's a 12 again. Luis Robert, 28.9. Juan Soto. People are so impressed with Juan Soto's eye. 20% strikeout rate. Adolis Garcia, 25.3. Corbin Carroll, 20.1. Hassan Kim, 19.8. Francisco Lindor, 21.9. Like we have yet to find someone who has a lower strikeout rate. And of course, that's like why he's at the top, because he doesn't strike out that much. But the point is just that like players who can be offensively valuable in lots of different shapes and sizes, and you can power and on base and speed and whatever, that almost all of those guys, all of them are striking out more than Ronald Acuna Jr., despite not also doing the other things as well as him. That's not a really roundabout way of making that point, but to me, it felt really like
he's good in all of the ways. You know, I actually sorted the list a different way, and it'll drive us back into the Bravesiness of this all. If you go look for a player, if you just go down the strikeout percentage leaderboard, looking for the first player with more home runs than Acuna, you go all the way to a guy at 16% strikeout rate who has 26 home runs to his 25. It's Ozzie Albies. So it's really just like, okay, his best friend is the next one, the guy who plays second base for the Braves.
I thought you were going to say that you get to Matt Olson, who I think is leading the National League with 39 home runs, but that's just if you're going by WAR again. Yeah, the Braves are really good. I thought it was truly, I've seen this fact now a couple times, and I keep disbelieving it so much that I've run the math on it every time. The Braves lead baseball in home runs. They have 213 team home runs. The next highest is the Dodgers at 181. So already pretty wild, just the sheer difference in home runs. But also, they are on pace for 313 home runs, which would be an all-time record. In 2019, the year of the juiced baseball, the Twins hit 307. I don't feel that when I think about the Braves, but maybe I should. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know that they are good. I think of them as being good in this all-around way, maybe because Ronald Acuna Jr. is such like a prominent avatar for the rest of the team, and he's good in this all-around way. I think of them as being good in an all-around way so predominantly that it blocks out how singularly good they are at home run hitting. Like, they are the best, currently on pace to be the best home run hitting team in baseball history. They don't scream that.
No, well, some of them do, but you forget because they have assembled this core, which I'm now just going to dub them the Magnificent Seven. They've got these 7 guys who are signed for roughly forever, or on long-term extensions. The oldest of them is 29. Matt Olson is the oldest guy in this group of Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Ronald Acuna Jr., Sean Murphy, Austin Riley, Spencer Strider, and I'm missing a position player somewhere, but that's okay. None of them are 30, and they're just going to continue being amazing for the foreseeable future. And a lot of them hit a lot of home runs. That's their strong suit, especially Riley and Olson. They just hit dingers all the time. And, you know, Ozzie hits a lot for a guy his size and for a middle infielder. So that's their thing.
This is, again, going to be like how my brain perceives things that are impressive that perhaps won't translate. We're back on that Fangraphs position player leaderboard list. Ronald Acuna Jr. is first. Okay, Ronald Acuna Jr. is first. Before you get to another Atlanta Braves player, the next one is Matt Olson at 17. You get both Freddie Freeman, who is currently second on the position player leaderboard list, and Dansby Swanson, who is 15th on the position player leaderboard list by WAR, who were both on the Braves and left. And yet the Braves as a whole are still the best team in baseball. Like, it's just that is probably the thing they are most known for. And even still, looking at it sort of through that lens feels like an even stronger point of emphasis than their reputation would lead you to believe. That, like, not only do they sign guys to really long-term extensions when they're early in their careers, and if they don't do that, then they just let them walk in free agency, and then they replace them, and then they announce their own deals. That part's fun too. But they are doing that to a degree. They're not replacing guys who then decline. They are replacing guys who continue to be very productive, but the loss of that level of production does not seem to hurt the Braves in a team way at all. And that is crazy. Like, that is them. The Braves and the Astros are the two teams who have been able to do that. And really, that's why they're good for long stretches of time, because you cannot, well, cannot or will not keep every really good player because they all are worth a lot of money, and they all should get the opportunity to earn that money, even if the team that originally brought them into the league will not pay them. So sometimes they leave, and then they get paid elsewhere.
The other factor I'll just mention in closing for the Braves that is helping them this year specifically, which they have not always been good throughout the whole season. They have repeatedly started slow and then come on at the end in recent years. This year, inspired maybe by old teammate Freddie Freeman, of the 11 players who are still on pace to play 162 games who have yet to miss a game, 4 of them are Braves. There's 11 players in the entire league, and 4 of them are Braves. It's extremely nutty. The 4 players on the Braves who have not missed a game yet are good ones. Ronald Acuna Jr., Matt Olson, Austin Riley, and Ozzie Albies, all on pace for 162. If you're wondering, yes, Freddie Freeman also has not missed a game this year in LA. So that's helping that all of their big guys have been healthy except for Michael Harris II, I think.
Truly, in addition to finding out how they sign guys to these long-term extensions and how they draft and develop so well, the other teams should poach their training staff. How are they keeping their guys so healthy? Because this is not like a fluke. I mean, Ronald Acuna Jr. did miss time for like a significant injury that probably the training staff couldn't have prevented. It happened on the field in the midst of a play. But even prior to this year, like playing a lot of games every day, or a lot of guys playing every day is kind of a Braves thing. We have not mentioned their pitching. It has not been their strongest suit. However, they did just get Max Fried back. He was incredibly dominant in his return. He retired the first 12 batters, allowed just 3 hits in 6 innings, no walks, 8 strikeouts. And then they won 8-0 because their offense is good too. Spencer Strider leads all of baseball in strikeouts at 211. And just since we had so much fun with the home run comparison, second place for the strikeouts is Kevin Gausman at 177. Again, pretty big difference. Pitching more generally, they need some rotation depth. Then now they have Strider, and if Fried is going to be good, then that's like an incredible 1-2 punch. But, Charlie Morton has been struggling recently. Michael Soroka was back, but only briefly. So...
But guy you'd never heard of before this year, Bryce Elder, has one of the best ERAs in baseball because of course he does. And he's a real ground ball, weak contact guy that, I don't know, I think it's probably going to continue working at least for this year. So
I want to ask you, and I don't know, this is like not I don't know if this is interesting. Are you excited by the Braves? Like, if they storm through the National League side of the postseason, will that be a satisfying, like, okay, great, let's just wrap it up and get them into the World Series sort of on that side of the bracket? Or will you be disappointed if there isn't like a interesting challenger that emerges?
I mean, I'd love them to have an interesting challenge. I don't want them to sweep everybody and like roll right in. But I do find it more satisfying when the awesome team gets a full chance to play in the World Series. I am interested in greatness being cataloged accurately, which baseball does not always, or I would say even often do on the team postseason success scale. The Braves literally won the World Series when Acuna was out and they had to replace their entire outfield on the fly. Like, it was not representative of like, this was the best team. It was like, oh, we figured it out. And I would be interested in this entire core, which I think everyone in baseball recognizes as this incredible collection of talent that has been secured for so long. I'd be interested in the final results showing that. If this team wins 2 or 3 titles and ends up as a dynasty, that feels right. That feels much more logical than, I don't know, the Giants winning every other year with a rotating cast of nobodies. Like, that feels right. And so I'm not saying I'm rooting for Atlanta to win the World Series 2 or 3 times. I understand how that could get boring. But at least once, I think it would track with how we view things if this team won. Once. Well, not with this full assortment.
I know. I do think that makes me more interested to see them, like the kind of like, they did it without Acuna, but now Acuna is back and he's their best player, so give him another shot kind of thing. That is interesting to me. I'm gonna have to emotionally invest in the Braves more because, like, to circle it back to their their Fangraphs odds. The reason they have such high odds of winning the World Series relative to literally everybody else, like the next highest team, I think, is the Braves, maybe, or sorry, the Dodgers. They're the Dodgers. Oh. No, I think they're for the playoff odds. Yes, the Dodgers have the next highest World Series odds, and the reason that the Braves and the Dodgers is because the NL field is weaker than the AL field, and so that's why I phrase that question that way, because it just kind of feels like, look, if it's the Braves from the NL side, sure, of course. That in some ways, like, it would almost be disappointing if it's not them, just because like they are quite clearly the best team coming out of that side. The Dodgers are really good too, and that's why they have the second highest. But if a different team than the Braves or Dodgers wins the National League pennant, it will seem much more fluky than almost any team winning
the AL. Yeah.
The AL, because the AL, everyone who is good has to face somebody else who is equally good, sort of, at some point. And so, like, yeah, okay, like even the Rays, who were so good, are like now not even in first place because the Orioles are so good. And so, like, those two teams will have to face each other at some point. Only one of them can emerge. So, like, no one losing in the AL will feel quite so much as like we were deprived of seeing that super team on a World Series stage. All right, so this is your official notice, everybody who has room in their heart to do so, because you're not like a Mets fan or a Phillies fan. You should emotionally invest in the Braves now, at least enough to appreciate them probably playing in the World Series this year. And now I'm gonna do a quick little bandwagon. This is gonna bring us back to the thing that we led with. Kevin Brown, the Orioles play-by-play announcer, was off the air, and apparently, based on reporting that we all trust and that was verified by other reporting, and so we're going with this, even though it truly seems crazy. And again, that's not to disparage the reporting, that is to disparage the Angelos family. Was apparently off the air because the Angelos family was mad at him for accurately saying that the Orioles have been not good against the Rays in years that are not this one, which he said in relation to the fact that they have been good against the Rays this year. So just yeah, he was saying that they weren't good against the Rays in previous years, but like a generally like anodyne comment as far as attempting to set up a series, which is what he was doing. It was like, I believe, based on the way it's framed, and I've seen the clip, I believe it was like a pregame package, which they had a graphic built for. That seems pretty critical. It's not like he went rogue.
Yeah, the stat he relayed was from the game notes that the team made and distributed.
Right. Like, it's a stat that was just sort of like, hey, they're playing the Rays. In the past, they've been like really tough press to ever get a win here at Tropicana Field, and yet this year here they are as evidence of the Orioles' ascendance. Look at them being good against a team that has historically had their number. That was what he said. Just presented the facts. The Angelos family took exception to the implication, the accurate implication, the context.
The Orioles used to be bad.
That the Orioles used to be bad, and that badness was a direct result of the lack of investment by the ownership, because they were attempting to build this team that is both good and cheap. And you know what? They succeeded in doing that. The team currently is good and it is cheap. So that's what they want it to be. And it's succeeded because of the plan that involved being cheap and bad for a little while, which, for whatever like else that we're going to get into about, like, I just don't understand, like, yes, yeah, that was the plan. You were bad on purpose, and so you could be good now. And since it worked, it feels weird to take exception to someone being like, remember when they were bad on purpose? I didn't even say they were bad on purpose, which probably would have been like a more sensitive subject, because I don't like to admit that. Okay, before I get into the thing that I'm actually bandwagoning, I just want to like do my quick little rant, because I haven't decided yet if I'm going to write a column, and we're going to practice it right here. The one thing that I will say in defense of baseball and other sports team owners who are cheap and who get the villain edit because they are so cheap is, well, it's not the biggest problem we have in the world. And I mean that truly to their credit, that like, look, I agree that cheap ownership sucks, and that increasingly fans are attuned to that and critical of it. But on the scale that is like famine, disease, other social inequities, paying guys the major league minimum, which is like somewhere above 500,000, yeah, is not actually like a moral evil. Cheap owners are bad in the absence of being good more so than they are in being like actively negative, which is to say that if you are a cheap baseball owner and people don't like you because you're a cheap baseball owner, and then your team gets good, well, lucky for you, that's the part that people care about more. And since the first part was only like bad in a sports fan way, we'll probably just stop talking about it because it's not that interesting once the team is good. And yet, the Angelos family was like, no, we're going to make this story about us and
in a bad way.
In a bad way. Yes. That like, this was stupid and embarrassing. And as Gary Cohen put it, they were draping themselves in humiliation, but it was also just incredibly self-defeating. Like, yeah, the Angelos family kind of sucks as ownership. And there's like a lot of like annoying examples and like the whole massive mess or whatever. But like, they don't suck so much that people were going to talk about it instead of talking about the Orioles being like the second team to 70 wins and in first place in the AL East. Wow, that was so much more fun. Let's just talk about that. And then they went and did an actively bad thing. They were like, instead of just being bad by not spending a lot of money, we're gonna use our influence to hurt someone's career who is good at their job and who is like vocal, literally paid to do so, supporter of their team, who provides a positive experience, who's someone that the fans have a connection with, who's great at their job. Like, it's just such an unforced error. Like, I know that's like a dumb phrase. It's like said too much and often in a joking way, but like, this is an unforced error on an insane scale. Like, yeah, you guys kind of suck. And that's a bummer, but like, just lay low and let the team be good now. All right. What am I bandwagoning? Because this is a lot of talking. I'm bandwagoning like virtually everyone being outraged about this. Just the outpouring, specifically the outpouring of support for Kevin Brown, who is a very good broadcaster and a lovely person and like an overwhelmingly positive person. Like, he's not like an old, bitter, complains about the game broadcaster. He's like a young, fresh voice who's like a sweet person. Has been good to me and great about the Orioles. So people have been very vocal in their support of him and unflinching in their evaluation of how utterly stupid this is for the Orioles and the Angelos. Horrendous decision by the Orioles, Gary Cohen said. I don't know what they were thinking, but they got exactly the reaction they deserve. And it's just a shame because the Orioles are playing so well and now they've diverted attention from that and made themselves a laughingstock. Sorry for stealing your point, Gary Cohen. I guess that was just what I was saying. I'm just going to really quickly run through, like, we don't have to read them all, but just some of the people who have sort of spoken out about this. Nesson's Dave O'Brien called this a fiasco and that it's an absolute joke. John Sterling and Susan Waldman talked about it on the Yankees radio broadcast. They said that if the Orioles owners, if Angelos was our boss, we'd get fired every day. John Sterling said, we comment that the Yankees have terrible batting average and terrible on-base percentage, which, all right, the Yankees were probably like, you didn't need to, but fine. Jason Benetti, the Chicago White Sox play-by-play guy, called Kevin Brown one of the best play-by-play announcers in the country, made a joke about the Orioles. Gary Cohen again said that they draped themselves in humiliation when they fired John Miller, and they are doing it again. If you don't want Kevin Brown, there are 29 other teams that do. Howie Rose tweeted that the Baltimore Orioles should be ashamed of themselves. Oh gosh, who was this? Michael Kay, the Yes Network's Michael Kay, echoed Howie Rose and said that the Orioles should be ashamed of themselves, and that if John Angelos, the owner of the Orioles, didn't like that, then he is a thin-skinned, he's unreasonable, and he should actually get a call from Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball, because it is unconscionable that you would actually suspend a really good broadcaster for no other reason whatsoever. Michael Kay said he did absolutely nothing wrong. So, and there've been more, like just it's a little bit, broadcasters protecting their own, but delighted by every one of these. I am happy to keep consuming them. Please send them to me. Please keep talking about it.
This reminds me of when Ticketmaster pissed off Taylor Swift fans. It's like, oh no, this is no. This is the worst bear you could have poked. I mean, the Orioles went and upset just every baseball person with a microphone and just like got roundly condemned by like just 29 TV broadcasts in one night. It was honestly an achievement in incompetence. I mean, just an excellent display of what not to do.
How many more people know that the Orioles had a bad record against the Tampa Bay Rays these past few years than would have known if they hadn't suspended Kevin Brown? Like, a number of times I've seen people be like, what? Just because he said that the Orioles had a bad record against the Tampa Bay Rays? Like, please, I want every single person who watches baseball to know that the Orioles had a bad record against the Tampa Bay Rays in previous seasons, because that was all that Kevin Brown wanted people to know. And
just, by trying to, I guess, I don't know what they were trying to do here, put Kevin Brown in his place or change him in some way. They've definitely made it like guaranteed that Kevin Brown will have an even better career than he was going to have before, and increase the likelihood that it will not be for them.
But you're right. Just to wrap it up, my bandwagon this week is all of the baseball broadcasters, radio broadcasters, commentators who did not let themselves be cowed by this experience or, by awareness of this experience, and instead rightfully were like, we should be allowed to say true facts about baseball teams. So thank you to all of you. Keep doing it. We here at the Bandwagon also think you should be allowed to say that the Orioles have a bad record against the Tampa Bay Rays in previous seasons, but a good record against the Tampa Bay Rays this season. And that's all we've got for you this week. Thanks to Stone for filling in as our producer this week. Wow. We never thank our actual producers, so thanks to John, our other producer, who's usually here. We'll thank him again next time he's actually on. Thanks to Stone for filling in as our producer. You can follow us on, I'm going to keep calling it Twitter. You can also follow us on Threads or Blue Sky, but I've kind of stopped posting there. Like I said, I continue to let the decline of Twitter make me feel more uninhibited in my tweeting. If you made it this far, subscribe to the podcast YouTube channel, leave us a 5-star review, tell a friend, and we'll be back next week with another episode of The Bandwagon.